After being brought back to the family for a year, I was still the overlooked younger daughter. I was seen as inexperienced, dumb, ugly, and jealous of my twin sister, Daisy, who was also kidnapped years ago. There was no real or fake daughter situation. Daisy and I had the same bloodline. She was real, and so was I. But she was coddled by her adoptive parents, given extra love by her biological parents out of guilt, and respected by her younger brother. Only I had rotten luck, escaping from the mountains against all odds, only to arrive at a home I didn't fit into. This wasn't where I belonged. Later, the family lost an embarrassing daughter, and the world gained a master of sew embroidery. Lily, it's your sister's engagement party today. Can you please not show up looking like that and embarrass us? The tall young guy looked really annoyed. Those people outside are important. If you go out there, how will they see your sister? How will they see our family? Tom's attitude wasn't just disrespectful, it was worse than how he treated the household staff. He seemed to have forgotten that I was his older sister too. A sister who, like Daisy, was sadly kidnapped at age 3. My memories before age 3 were blurry, really blurry. Before I came back, I had no idea what kind of family I came from. Even on the day I returned, stepping into that fancy villa, it still felt like a dream. Completely ridiculous. Daisy and I were twins, so technically, we should have looked pretty similar. But our totally different fates changed all that. They said that year, the family's business rival hired people to kidnap Daisy and me and demanded a crazy high ransom. It was a number the family could scrape together, but it would totally mess them up financially. While they were getting the ransom ready, the family called the cops. The human traffickers heard about it and, being ruthless, sold both Daisy and me off. After that, we were gone without a trace. When Mrs. Miller, my birth mother, found out, she fainted on the spot. And that's when Tom was in her belly. He was 4 years younger than Daisy and me. Even though we were both kidnapped, Daisy and I had completely different lives. She was sold to a middle-aged couple who couldn't have kids, and they were pretty well off. She was raised with care, mastered everything from music to painting, got great grades, and got into a top college. Daisy was found and brought back after she graduated high school. Her adoptive parents passed away during her high school years, and 18-year-old Daisy inherited everything they owned. Soon after, the Millers found her and brought her back to this rich family. As for me, I was sold deep in the mountains and became a child bride bought by a farming family for their son. I was constantly beaten and scolded from a young age, and going hungry was just normal. Tom's voice was still ringing in my ears, full of disgust. You could totally get rid of that scar, but you refuse. Isn't that just to remind Mom and Dad how much they owe you? It's not like they wanted you and your sister to be kidnapped. You guys were gone for the same number of years, so how did you end up so different from her? Yeah, how did I end up so different? The closer people were, the better they knew where to stick the knife. When I was 16, a single guy in the village, over 40, took a liking to me. He pulled out most of his savings to talk to the people who raised me about buying me. So I hardened my heart and used a sharp stone to cut a big gash on my face. After the wound healed, it became a terrifying scar. But it protected me from a lot of creepy intentions. Only with it there did I feel safe. The Millers didn't get it. Maybe because Daisy was so amazing before me. They had hoped when they decided to bring me back. They hoped their second daughter had been raised as well as the older one during the years she was missing. Things didn't work out that way. All they got was a disfigured and clueless Lily. Don't think I don't know, you want everything your sister has. You even want her man. Seriously, get a grip. How could our family have someone like you? Look in the mirror, seriously. Why would we even look at you? Tom's words were like a sharp knife twisting. He was the one who couldn't stand me the most in the family, thought I was embarrassing, but he and Daisy got along pretty well. He left after saying that. And I didn't go to Daisy's engagement party. I'd only known her for 2 short years. Even though we were blood related, it was hard to have a deep bond like normal sisters. Just like Tom said, I was jealous of her. We were born together, but our fates went in opposite directions. There was nothing really wrong with Daisy, she was just selfish in a perfectly convenient way. Tom thought I wanted to steal Daisy's man, but nobody would like someone who humiliated them over and over. I just regretted that 2 years ago, at the gate, I gave Will first aid and called an ambulance for him. I didn't expect him to be super grateful, but he shouldn't have been so ungrateful. I could handle him thinking Daisy saved him, and I could handle Daisy letting him believe it. But I couldn't accept my blood relatives, who were all dressed up for Daisy's engagement party, demanding that I hide away like a rat in a sewer. I looked at my packed suitcase, and my phone popped up a reminder to manage my schedule. Time to go. The plane landed 3 hours later, and I was in another city. Inside the airport, in the middle of the crowd, someone suddenly called my name. Lily Miller. I looked over and saw a huge red banner. Welcome Lily Miller out of hardship and into a new life. There weren't many words, but the banner was big, the font was huge, and people passing by kept glancing at it. My shoes felt glued to the airport floor. I couldn't move. Suddenly, I felt like maybe today wasn't a good day to go out. It had been a long time since I'd felt this intensely embarrassed. It was different from being at the Millers. My face under my mask was so hot I felt like I was going to burn up. The two girls holding the banner spotted me, and they excitedly ran over. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Lily, you're finally here. Look, this is our welcome ceremony for you. Do you like it? My voice was weak. Please, can you put the banner away? No way. Let's take a picture first. Seriously. You said you were coming back, so Layla and I stayed up all night to get this banner made. I couldn't win against them, so they pulled me over, and we took a picture in front of the banner. They even got a stranger to take it for us. In the picture, Layla and Sophie were grinning, and even I, wearing a mask, had eyes that were smiling. Sophie looked at the photo inside. Lily, your eyes are seriously amazing. Listen to me, let's get that surgery, okay? I went silent again. Lots of people had tried to convince me to get the scar removed over the years, to the point where even strangers would suggest it. Ugh, we just met, and you're already bringing that up again. Don't talk about it. Layla covered Sophie's mouth with her hand. I smiled. It's okay, I'm fine. You don't need to do this. When the car finally stopped in front of a manor, I suddenly felt a bit nervous, like when you're about to arrive home after a long time away. But after hesitating, I still walked in. Walking through a corridor, I saw the person waiting in the hall and my throat tightened. Maria. The white-haired elderly woman's eyes welled up too. She looked at me and murmured, "How did you get so thin?" After escaping the mountains, even though I drifted like a water hyacinth, I was lucky enough. I met Maria and made friends. Maria was a master of Sioux embroidery, an intangible cultural heritage, and she was obsessed with it her whole life. She had become famous over 20 years ago. Over the years, her pieces were auctioned off for high prices and were hard to come by. I met her when I was in a really tough spot. Back then, I didn't even have legal status or a proper name. It was hard just to earn a living. Proper factories and restaurants wouldn't hire me, especially with the terrifying scar on my face. Maria gave me the name Lily and helped me sort out my identification issues. After that, she brought me into her studio and taught me embroidery. She said, "Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime." Maria opened a studio and took in many apprentices, but very few people were truly dedicated to this field. She took me in out of kindness and was surprised to find my talent in this area, so she taught me with even more dedication. Sophie was her granddaughter, and the first friend I made here. As for Layla, Maria found her. She came from a family in the cosmetic surgery field. Her parents were experts, they owned hospitals, and her siblings specialized in these areas too. Maria knew her parents and asked her mother to consult with me initially. Layla came along as well. Even though I didn't get the surgery due to psychological issues, Layla's mother promised to do the surgery for me after I overcame my obstacles. But before that could happen, the Millers found me. When Maria helped me register my identity information, she also recorded my DNA information. One day, the police called and said my family had been found. If the Millers had just been a regular middle-class family, Maria wouldn't have let me go. She thought I would have a life without worries, filled with love from my family, by sending me back. Maria held my hand and said, "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." I didn't tell them much about my life at the Millers, but I don't know what they imagined, as they kept looking at me with hesitation. And that hesitant concern turned into one delicious dish after another at the dinner table. Lily, eat more. Someone returning home usually gets 3 days of meticulous care. On the 4th day, Maria was waiting for me in her studio, her tone no longer reflecting the past few days' care but turning serious. Go try it. I want to see if you've given back everything I taught you. Maria, why don't you look at my work from the past 2 years first? I said, testing the waters. Maria paused. You've been embroidering? Of course. For Maria, embroidery was a lifelong pursuit. For me, it was the lifeline she threw me in a desperate situation. I placed the pieces I brought from the millers in front of Maria. One piece was a goldfish in water, and it took me 3 months to complete. But sadly, ink was spilled on it. Tom spilled it. Because I had an argument with Daisy. He just decided without asking that I had bullied his sister, then sneaked into my room and poured ink on the embroidery that was almost finished. Tom was smug then. What's the point of embroidering this rag? Our family doesn't need a seamstress. My parents sided with him, telling me, as the older sister, not to argue with my younger brother. But the thing was, did he even see me as his sister? Maria looked at my ruined piece for a long time, thinking, then finally said, just create. There's nothing more I can teach you. She said that basic embroidery skills were easy to learn, but creating was the hardest part. The spark for creation was rare. And even copying a painting to turn it into embroidery required inspiration. I got my own embroidery room. Maria's kids and grandkids had their own careers, and none of them went into embroidery like her, even though she had students all over the country. Sophie hung out in my embroidery room every day and would say, Grandma is totally training you to be her successor. She often said she just couldn't sit still long enough to do such detailed work. At night, she and Layla would squeeze onto the bed in my room, and we'd chat until 2 or 3 in the morning. I gradually started opening up to them, and told them some bits and pieces about my life at the Millers. They were so angry they were hitting the bed. Ugh. Your brother is such a jerk. You're both sisters, and he fawns over the other one while bullying you? Sophie was a bit younger than me and full of righteous indignation. Layla was also totally shocked. Are you saying your parents didn't announce you were back because you wouldn't get surgery to fix your face? Your brother made fun of you for not going to high school? Who does that? What kind of upbringing is that? You went through so much, and they still treated you like crap when you went back. It's their fault for not taking care of you in the first place, but they don't think about that and just think you're not good enough for their family? They were so mad they couldn't sleep. I finally calmed them down a bit. It's okay, it's all in the past. I'm not sad anymore. Not being sad meant not caring. I didn't care anymore. The Millers seemed to realize I was gone about 2 weeks later. During those 2 weeks, I spent a lot of time in the embroidery room. That feeling of finally being able to focus on one thing made me feel peaceful, like all my anxiety and restlessness were far away. Until Tom called. Lily Miller, where did you go? His tone was still not good, let alone respectful. You're a grown-up. What are you doing running away from home? Do you expect Mom and Dad to go look for you? Leaving home, it felt like my scar in this family, and not even Daisy's scar. And my own younger brother used my scar to mock me. Tom, I heard my voice say, stop contacting me. Let's just be strangers from now on. You didn't want me as a sister anyway, right? Tom seemed stunned. Then after a moment he sneered. What trick are you pulling now? Are you only happy if the whole family feels guilty about you? I don't owe you anything. How much money and effort did Mom and Dad spend looking for you over the years? What else do they owe you? Your sister is also a victim, she owes you even less. He said it in a detached, almost cruel tone. It's just your bad luck. Who can you blame? I'm not blaming anyone. My tone was as calm as my mind. Let's just live our own lives from now on and pretend I don't exist. Tom always thought having a sister like me was embarrassing. My appearance, education, and experience weren't good enough for such a wealthy family. But when he heard me say that, he didn't take it seriously. Fine, just don't come crawling back later. About half a day after Tom's call, my biological father, Mr. Miller, called me. He was brief, just one commanding sentence. Come home now. Dad, I still called him that. I'm not coming back. I don't like living with you. What? Mr. Miller probably didn't expect to hear such childish words from his adult child. I continued, I'm grateful that you and Mom brought me into the world, but in the past 2 years, I've realized we don't have to be family. Lily Miller, his tone became heavier. Do you know where the money you're using now comes from? If you don't come back, will you go back to working illegally like before? I'd actually understood early on that this disrespect wasn't just from Tom. My biological parents allowed it. That's none of your business. I hung up and didn't answer any more calls or reply to any messages from the family. So 3 days later, they stopped my card. If they had looked at the transaction history, they would have known I hadn't spent much of the money on it in the past 2 years. I didn't need expensive clothes or luxury goods. I didn't need to socialize with young men and women from families of similar status. And I didn't need the so-called halo of being the second Miss Miller. Initially, I just wanted to experience what it felt like to have true blood relatives. But the truth proved that even among supposed family, there was conditional scrutiny and comparison. For example, I was always compared to Daisy and Tom. But the things they compared me on were things I had almost no experience with. That wasn't my fault. Layla's mother came to visit Maria soon after and gave me another consultation. She touched the terrifying scar on my face, her expression very gentle. Lily, have you thought about it? Caring eyes were always warm, but they didn't sting. My eyes flickered. Auntie Jo, I'm sorry, I'm not mentally ready yet. It's okay. Layla's mother had the approachable nature of most cosmetic professionals, but she was more sincere. I have a friend who's a psychologist. How about I take you to see her sometime? Auntie Jo, I hadn't even said no yet, but she already guessed what I was going to say. Lily, my parents and your Maria are good friends. Your teacher has high hopes for you, and she's the most patient with you. You don't have to worry about still being against surgery after seeing a psychologist. As long as you don't want it, no one can force you to have surgery. I knew clearly that all of this was because of Maria. The scar on my face didn't affect my life, but it definitely attracted a lot of strange looks. It was both my sense of security and one of the sources of my insecurity. After thinking for a long time, I finally nodded. Auntie Jo, thank you. So my life became a routine of embroidery studio, psychologist's office, and home. Actually, the embroidery studio was in Maria's manor, and I lived there too. Compared to the old Miller residence, this place felt more like home. Maria had taken on some orders years ago, and only finished them last year. And by the end of this year, she was holding a Sue embroidery exhibition. So like me, Maria was also working from dawn till dusk to finish her pieces. She said she would save a few spots for my work. I got a special setup to record my creative process, just like Maria. She said the birth of every piece was worth documenting. Besides that, even though I didn't think it was necessary, my closet started filling up with more clothes. Maria probably heard about my life over the past couple of years from Sophie. She bought me a lot of fancy stuff. Though in her eyes, true luxury was something money couldn't buy. Maria wasn't short on cash. Her most expensive piece once sold for 8 figures at auction, and that piece took her almost 4 years to make. She learned her skills from her mother. As times changed, her kids and grandkids found better careers, so fewer and fewer people were truly mastering Sue embroidery. Rich people still asked Maria for custom pieces, and they were willing to pay a lot. But Maria was past the age of being overly focused on money, so her work was more about passion. She told me, I'm old now. I don't know how many more years I have left. Before I go, I just want to embroider what I love. She said Sue embroidery shouldn't just be passed down the old way. We needed to find ways to use modern tools to promote it. The internet was the best way. So I also created my own social media account. The traffic wasn't great at first, but it didn't matter. Sue embroidery was something that required dedication, and time would eventually prove everything. During that time, I'd sometimes even forget to eat. By the end of the day, my eyes and shoulders would ache, and I wouldn't even think about checking my phone. Tom would send me messages at first, often showing off the apartments, cars, or other expensive things his parents bought him and Daisy, especially on my and Daisy's birthdays. She got shares in Miller Group. On her first birthday after getting engaged, with the Millers and Smiths confirming their business partnership, the Miller parents showed how important their older daughter was to them. Even so, it didn't mean those siblings were treated equally. Because from what I knew, Tom already got company shares when he turned 18. This favoritism even felt like it was increasing or decreasing based on their status. I never replied to Tom's messages, but Daisy and my birth mother tried to contact me. Daisy said, "Lily, coming home is the best choice for you." I understood what she meant. Even if I wasn't good enough for the Miller family in every way, they had money, and they wouldn't completely abandon me. She also said, "You hate me, but you're an adult now. Are you going to give up a good life just out of spite?" Daisy, I could barely call her sister anymore. You can say that only because you're not me. She always thought that because she was also kidnapped as a child, she could completely understand me, but there was no such thing as true empathy in this world. Compared to her, what I resented was fate, and the parents who should have protected me from a young age. Daisy's rationality was only because she hadn't gone through the hardships and despair that I had. My birth mother, Mrs. Miller, sent me many voice messages, accusing me of being ungrateful for her giving birth to me and for the pain she went through looking for her daughter for years, and accusing me of not being as generous and well-behaved as her older daughter, whom she also found. While she could see my lack of filial piety, she couldn't see that their favoritism and neglect were a form of domestic abuse for me. So, I also learned to ignore and be indifferent. For nearly half a year, I went to therapy consistently and even took some medication. Sometimes the medication made me sleepy, but being in a haze also felt incredibly relaxing. However, because I was such a perfectionist, even though I only worked on one thing every day, I only managed to finish one piece in 6 months. It was a double-sided embroidery with different designs on each side, depicting Guanyin on a lotus throne. It was then that I finally made up my mind and went in for scar removal surgery. Layla's mother performed the surgery herself. After the surgery, while recovering, I saw Maria's embroidery exhibition online and realized that my work from the past 2 or 3 years was displayed in a prominent spot. Even the goldfish in water piece, which Tom had once splattered with ink, was displayed at the exhibition after Maria worked on it, credited with both my name and hers. On the ink that had almost ruined the piece, she used dark embroidery threads to create water plants, and she also embroidered sewage and trash. The entire piece had a changed meaning, but it definitely looked like a work full of deep meaning. The scar on my face took several months to heal, but it was visibly much better than before. Maria brought me good news. Someone offered to buy my work. Besides the goldfish piece she had modified later, someone offered a substantial amount for the Lotus Throne Guanyin piece. I wanted to give all the money from selling the artwork to Maria. When she heard my plan, she smiled and refused. "Lily, your teacher isn't short on money. How could I take your money?" "But Maria, I've been living off you all this time." Even the surgery fees and 6 months of therapy were paid for by her, not to mention the money she spent on me after picking me up years ago. Maria smiled again. "What you've brought me is worth far more than money." She wouldn't take my money, so it stayed in my account. Maria gave me a new task. Besides daily embroidery, she arranged English classes for me. She said that while education wasn't always the most important thing, mastering a language or skill for communication definitely was. Maria had some friends and fans abroad, and she could communicate fluently in English, so she required me to be able to as well. A new language was much harder than Sioux embroidery. I practiced pronunciation until I felt sick and listened to English until my brain felt like mush. During the holidays, Maria's son and daughter-in-law came back, as did Sophie and her brother and sister-in-law. I sat at the dinner table, feeling like part of the family, just like years ago. Sophie's sister-in-law put food on my plate. "Lily, eat more. I haven't seen you in a while. You look so much better." Sophie's brother also nodded. Yeah, Lily, it's a good thing you came back. Otherwise, Grandma would be complaining every day that she has no successor." According to them, the year Maria wanted a successor the most, her son, daughter-in-law, and grandchildren were all forced to learn Sioux embroidery, but none of them had the talent or patience to really dedicate themselves to it. I smiled, my eyes warm. Maria's descendants were all successful and kind. They were willing to accept someone like me, who wasn't related to them at all, into their family. The kind of family I once couldn't reach, I seemed to have found. After Maria's Sioux embroidery exhibition ended, I gained a little recognition in the industry. But it was just a little. I really started to become known to more people because a woman asked me to create a custom piece. She wanted me to bring her anime boyfriend into her life through Embroidery. He was a man with white hair. It was the first time I encountered such a wealthy client. She asked me to recreate her boyfriend 1:1. For this, I spent over a year working tirelessly. My client agreed to let me record the embroidery process and share it online. Because this piece was filled with so much love, I had to be focused every single moment. The process of embroidery is long, especially depending on the size of the piece. The time required varies. Therefore, few people can make it a lifelong career because before passion, there is survival. The embroidery threads were divided into many strands, and selecting the colors for hair and clothes took a lot of time. Even white had many shades. Comparing colors was very important. If it was slightly off, he wouldn't entirely be him anymore. During that time, my eyes were dry and tired from staying up. But fortunately, after over a year, the piece slowly came to life in my hands. When my client came to pick it up and saw her vividly embroidered boyfriend on the fabric, tears rolled down like a broken string of pearls. For me, it was just a piece of art. For her, it was a dimensional love she wanted to constantly feel closer to throughout her life. I edited the videos from the past year, and no matter how much I cut, they were still very long, so I split them into 2 videos. Unexpectedly, the videos I posted went viral. They quickly hit the trending list and brought me a wave of unexpected traffic. Comments section. OMG, it's so real. It looks like he's standing right in front of me smiling. It's not my imagination. On one side he's looking gently, and on the other side he's smiling. The artist is too amazing. Please tell me the price so I can give up hope. Is this the luxury passed down from our ancestors? I paused it for a long time and can't find a single thread end. Fellow fans are terrifyingly skilled. This is terrifying. All the anime characters are coming to life and kissing me. I rode a huge wave of traffic, all thanks to the star of the piece, the lady's beloved boyfriend. Many people messaged me wanting custom pieces of their boyfriends or favorite anime characters, some even offering higher prices. This was probably what they call breaking the circle, where embroidery unexpectedly collided with other communities. And riding this momentum, I quickly got a chance to make a name for myself. The Millers seemed to have completely forgotten about me. Later, no one from the family contacted me again, and I got a lot of peace. In an area they didn't care about, I achieved great success. Maria introduced me to her friends, both in the US and abroad. Thanks to her insistence that I learn English, I even took the IELTS exam. From stumbling at first, I became fluent in English conversation. This was 4 years after I left the Miller family. I was 27. One unremarkable afternoon, I got a call from my birth mother, Mrs. Miller. "Lily, your sister is getting married. Aren't you coming back for the wedding?" she said, her voice sounding a bit heavier than 4 years ago, maybe because of age, maybe something else. After thinking for a long time, I decided to go to Daisy's wedding. Honestly, I was surprised. I thought Daisy and Will would get married soon after their engagement, not 4 years later. And agreeing to go to her wedding wasn't because I still had hope for that family and my so-called relatives. I just wanted to look back at the wealthy family that had once suffocated me. People needed the courage to face their past. Maria said, "Go back and see for yourself. You'll realize it's not a place you're not good enough for. You're capable of growing into a towering tree on your own." Actually, that wasn't entirely true. Even though I could stand on my own 2 feet, I still relied entirely on her support back then. Maria was older now. Her hair was completely white, and she needed reading glasses to embroider. But she kept going, as if the end of her life was the only time she would stop doing embroidery. I knew her name would always be associated with embroidery. I traveled back to the city where the Miller family lived. I didn't show up until the day of Daisy's wedding. I didn't have an invitation, and was stopped outside. Before I could even prove who I was, Tom showed up. He looked at me with shock. "Lily Miller?" In 4 years, Tom had graduated college and started working for the family business. He had softened a little from the prickly attitude he had towards me years ago. Tom looked at me awkwardly, his gaze fixed on my face. "Your face?" He hesitated to speak. I said calmly, "I had surgery." Without the scar, I was indeed much better looking than before. But more than the scar on my face, the ease I felt when I re-encountered the Miller family made me realize I had finally left that dark and isolated period behind. As siblings with the same parents, Tom and I didn't have much to say to each other. He wasn't saying harsh things like before, and I didn't want to try and fix our relationship. "Lily, where have you been these past few years? Mom and Dad, they really missed you." After a while, Tom finally managed to say that. I looked up and studied Tom for a moment. This blood-related brother of mine did seem to speak more like a normal person than he did years ago. But it didn't matter to me. After a pause, I answered him, "It's not important." This was the wedding between the Millers and the Smiths, and the place was bustling. The venue where the wedding was held was incredibly luxurious. You could tell they'd spent a lot of money on it. Both sets of parents were busy greeting guests and socializing. The seating arrangement at the wedding was also significant. They probably still worried that my face would scare the guests, so they arranged a seat for me towards the back. Tom looked at the distance between my seat and his and suddenly said, "Go sit up front. I'll arrange it for you." "No thanks, this is fine." Tom hesitated and went back to his seat. Soon after, I saw my mom in the front row constantly turning back and looking in my direction. The wedding ceremony began, and the bride walked into the venue with her father. Daisy was beautiful today, but looking at her now, while we were similar, we weren't that similar anymore. You could tell we were sisters, but it was also easy to tell us apart. A wedding was also a networking event, and I inevitably ran into my parents. Mr. Miller looked me up and down, then nodded. "Now that you're back, don't leave again." My mother was also surprised by my change, but after a moment she said, "Lily, you're not young anymore. Your sister is married. Come home, and Mom will find you a good match." They really didn't disappoint me. I was silent for a while, then chuckled softly. "Sorry, if I need to find a partner, I don't plan on asking for your opinions." "Lily Miller, what do you mean?" My father, who was rarely contradicted, immediately exploded. He probably forgot that 4 years ago, I left the Miller family with nothing. How much more so now? Haven't you had enough of your hard life out there? He seemed to misunderstand my life a bit. Now that the scar on your face is gone, even if you didn't go to much school, as long as you're the second daughter of the Miller family, you can still marry into a suitable family and be a rich lady who doesn't have to worry about money. What more do you want? Do you have to compare yourself to your sister? She's better than you. And the Smiths value more than just her status. Communication was sometimes really hard. You're the ones who kept comparing me to Daisy, not me comparing myself to her, I said calmly. Besides, I paused, I'm an adult. Without using the family's resources, I don't think I have an obligation to follow your arrangements. I used to be angry, my eyes filled with resentment towards fate. But now, even if I still didn't forgive them, I felt light. As Mr. Miller was about to say something else, I heard someone behind me call my name. It was Chinese with an accent. I turned around and saw a middle-aged man with brown hair and blue eyes. He was British. "Mr. Simpson?" I knew this British man because he was a friend of Maria's and was now a client of mine. Even though I was busy, I still took on his order. Mr. Simpson's Chinese wasn't great. It was usually easier for me to communicate with him in English. But while I was chatting with him, the Miller family looked at me with surprise. Mr. Simpson asked, "Is this your family?" I shook my head. Maria is. But Mrs. Miller and Mr. Miller, for some reason, were very excited and said they were my parents. Mr. Simpson looked at them meaningfully and didn't interfere in other people's private matters anymore. As soon as he left, Mr. Miller and Tom couldn't help but immediately ask, "You know Mr. Simpson? What about him?" Tom said his company is currently looking to choose a domestic company for a long-term partnership. Miller Group is one of their candidates. This project is very important. If you have a good relationship with him. I cut Tom off. "Tom, are you asking me for a favor? Did you forget something? Are we even close enough for that?" "Lily Miller. You." Before Tom could finish, my mother spoke. "Lily, why are you arguing with your brother? He didn't know any better before, but you're the older sister. Am I just supposed to be a pushover as the older sister?" I countered, looking directly at Mrs. Miller. "He didn't know any better, but didn't you either?" It was ironic. After 4 years, before they even acknowledged the possibility of a family bond with me, they were already assessing my value as Lily Miller. Lily, that's not what Mom meant. Mrs. Miller moved her lips. You're part of our family after all. No, I'm not, I said calmly. I have my own registration, and you didn't fulfill your duty to raise me. I don't need you to now either. My calmness was indeed different from a few years ago. Beneath the calm was my confidence. I was just invited to the wedding. I'm not here for a family reunion. My words really pissed off my birth father. But today was Daisy's wedding, and it wasn't over yet. He couldn't let the guests see a spectacle. I didn't wait for the wedding to end before I left. The venue for the wedding was a bit too big, and I got a little lost, accidentally ending up in a deserted corner. Unexpectedly, I saw the bride and groom there. I walked in on their argument. Will Smith, my brother-in-law in name, was excitedly asking Daisy for confirmation. 6 years ago, on May 24th. Why did your friend say you were at a piano competition? Daisy was silent for a moment, and then her new husband continued to question her. If you were at a competition that day, then who saved me? I felt like this situation wasn't the place to linger, and as I turned to leave, I was discovered. Who's there? So they looked over, and my gaze met theirs calmly and confidently. This was probably the first time they had seen me again after a few years apart. People really are visual creatures. Without that scar on my face, I received many admiring glances today, even from the young men who had mocked me with Tom. Will's morals might have been slightly better than theirs, but only slightly. Is that you? He reacted faster, and was more agitated than Daisy. It was you back then. His voice was quieter, sounding unsure. Rewind to 6 years ago, I had just returned to the Miller family. One day in late May, Mr. and Mrs. Miller and Tom went to attend Daisy's piano competition. She won a trophy in the competition, which was later placed on her trophy wall. That same day, not far from the house, I encountered someone having an acute myocardial infarction. In a very short time, I performed CPR using emergency knowledge I learned online, and called 911. That person was Will. I didn't expect any benefits for being a good Samaritan, but after being discharged from the hospital, Will brought gifts to the Miller house to express his gratitude and immediately identified Daisy as his savior. Daisy, for whatever reason, accepted this. Not long after, she and Will became a couple. This was the first time Daisy and I had a big argument. She took credit for something that wasn't hers, and even knowing this action would hurt her own sister, she didn't even consider my feelings. Daisy said at the time, Will likes me. The so-called life-saving grace is just icing on the cake. I retorted coldly. Then why don't you dare tell him the truth? Daisy, your love started with a lie, and this lie will eventually become the biggest flaw in your relationship. Daisy ran out of my room crying that night. Tom saw that scene and was convinced that I had insulted Daisy, which led to him spilling ink on my embroidery piece. And later, Tom thought I wanted to steal his sister's boyfriend. Will himself seemed to think so too. I didn't know what Daisy was thinking, but she never explained anything for me. I looked directly at Will. At that time, he didn't understand the internal dynamics of the Miller family, and subconsciously believed that I, as the biological daughter who had suffered greatly and been found, must be unbalanced and inherently arrogant and bossy. As Daisy's boyfriend, he had spoken rudely to me several times to defend his girlfriend. I didn't look at him with much respect then either. I looked at him like he was an idiot. Right now, Will seemed fixated on getting an answer. Lily Miller, you saved me that day? Will was a somewhat romantic guy. He always believed his meeting with Daisy was a love story arranged by fate. And now he knew that this love story, from the beginning, was a lie. I knew he still liked Daisy, of course, but this deceitful beginning would become a flaw in their marriage in the future. I looked at Will for a moment and finally said, I wish I hadn't done a good deed that day. Clearly, I also disliked him. Daisy stepped forward and grabbed her husband's arm. Will, listen to me. Since she was the one who had lied first, she was naturally in the wrong. The argument between this newly married couple was their business. I found my way out anyway. Sophie got a job in this city after graduating from college, and said she would pick me up. Her recognizable pink car was parked at the entrance, and Sophie was waving at me by the car. She had recently gotten a perm and her hair looked really full. I didn't expect Tom to follow me out. Lily Miller. Lily. Their voices rang out one after the other. Then they saw each other. Sophie? That was Tom's voice, with a hint of pleasant surprise. He knew Sophie. Sophie was clearly stunned for a moment. She looked at Tom, then at me, and a guess blurted out. Lily, is he that jerk brother of yours? I remembered Sophie mentioning recently that she had a new suitor from a similar background who was pursuing her aggressively. Just as she hadn't expected it, I had never considered that person could be Tom. Sophie's expression made Tom uneasy. He wanted to say something, but Sophie spoke first. Tom, let's not contact each other anymore. I can't accept someone who bullies his own sister within the family. And I can't accept a family that's so ridiculously biased. Tom opened his mouth, his expression momentarily blank. He hadn't fully realized what this meant yet. Sophie had already put me in the car and got in herself, stepping on the gas and speeding away. In the car, she complained to me. Seriously, how can guys be such fakes? He acted so gentlemanly and generous with me, and he's your brother? I was silent for a moment, then said, maybe he's changed for the better these past few years? He was already in college years ago, with basic moral judgment, and he still treated you like that. At this point, Sophie seemed unable to resist feeling sorry for me again. You already tested their family's character for me. If I got together with him, how would that be any different from betraying you? Before today, Sophie had a bit of a crush on Tom, but now, that crush seemed to have completely vanished. She said there are too many guys in this world. If this one doesn't work out, there'll be another. Good point. I thought the wedding would be over and my life would just continue. But things didn't work out that way. The Millers started bothering me one by one, as if they'd planned it. First, my biological parents contacted me, hoping I'd come back. They probably finally bothered to learn about my life these past few years, and realized I was a leader in an industry. Even though it was Embroidery, which they used to look down on. They used to call it not having a real job. Now they probably realized my work was priceless outside of their circle, and wanted some as gifts for their business partners. Specifically for Mr. Simpson. They hoped to use my connections to get that project. My emotions and how I handled things were much more rational than before. At least I wouldn't get hysterical anymore. Please stop contacting me, I told Mom. Otherwise, I don't mind sharing my experience in the Miller family with Mr. Simpson. Lily. She got anxious. I'm your mother. I threw her own words back at her. Do you remember? You said before that you wished you hadn't brought me back. Haven't you gotten your wish now? Over the past 4 years, instead of the Millers not being able to find me, it was more like they had tacitly chosen to ignore me, choosing a family dynamic without me, because they figured I'd learn to humble myself when I couldn't make it on my own. Her crying rang in my ears. My heart was calm, and I hung up after saying goodbye to her. Next was Tom. He was heartbroken, even though from Sophie's account, they shouldn't have even been dating yet. Sophie had blocked and deleted this suitor, and wasn't giving him another chance. Tom, this rich kid who grew up with a silver spoon, seemed to be experiencing his first setback in love. Or maybe he really did like Sophie. So much so that when he was drunk and couldn't reach Sophie, he called me for help. Lily Miller, please tell me where Sophie is, okay? I'm sorry. Can you ask her to stop hiding from me? I was silent for a moment, then said, Sophie knew about our relationship before, and once took my phone to look at the messages you sent me. She had actually wondered if she was being too hasty, and tried to get to know Tom better, the person who supposedly fell in love with her at first sight. Sophie was still surprised when she saw those messages from Tom. Tom had never even sent me, his sister, a message with a slightly polite tone before, which was why our chat history was full of his sarcasm. Tom didn't say anything. I said, I can't make her decide. Sophie had been a little regretful then. Lily, he was actually really nice to me. But the next second Sophie said, too bad I'm looking for someone who is fundamentally a good person, not just someone who is good to me. Tom was completely out of the running with her. I don't know if he kept pursuing her later, but Sophie got another boyfriend the following year. She was young, pretty, and cheerful and outgoing, so she was never short of suitors. After a long silence, Tom sent me an apology message, but I didn't reply. And Will, 6 years later, I received his belated gratitude and apology. He came with Daisy. They were married by then, and their years together weren't fake. They weren't going to get divorced over a lie from the beginning. I thought about it and said, actually, it's not necessary. I would have helped anyone lying on the ground that day, but if I had a chance to go back to that day and knew it was you lying there, I would have pretended not to see you. I certainly didn't want to go through that kind of ungratefulness again. My words made Will's face turn red, but he couldn't talk back to me with the same self-righteousness as before. Daisy spoke again. She said the Miller family was willing to trade shares for me to come home. I said no need. I just hope you stop bothering me. When I was 28, I met a man, a teacher. He taught at a university. And I, as a master of intangible cultural heritage, went to that university to give a public lecture. Maybe it was still a bit of academic worship, but I became good friends with Professor One. Sophie later analyzed the situation for me and said I was probably sapiosexual. Layla had a different opinion, but Professor One is handsome and has a good physique, and he speaks very clearly. He's obviously a guiding type of partner. Sophie, shut up, you paper sexual, and be happy with your paper characters. Okay. Jack was 2 years older than me and had a PhD, but he had only been working for 3 years. His classes were full of people, some who came because of his reputation, like me, who couldn't understand anything. However, Jack's class was mandatory, and at the end of every semester, there were cries of despair everywhere. I heard he once wanted to offer an elective, as his regular classes were always well attended. But when it came time to choose courses, the results were terrible. There weren't enough students, so that elective was cancelled, of course. The school forum was buzzing with discussions, and the students were being really honest. No matter how handsome the teacher is, you can't mess with grades and GPA. Another class ended, and Jack walked down from the podium and looked at my scratch paper. On one side was the sketch for what I was about to embroider, and on the other side was the problem he had just explained. I didn't understand, so I just copied it down. This problem is a bit difficult for you, he said. I'll teach you the basics when we go back. A student who was about to leave heard this and couldn't help but tease. Professor One, you didn't say that to us just now. You said this was a basic problem. Jack. He would still teach me some science and math problems in private, starting from the simplest ones. I felt like it was a waste of his time, so I suggested he didn't need to do that. Jack looked up at me, his eyes soft, and he chuckled lightly. Well, what can I do? This is the only way I could find to keep seeing you. But then he quickly added, or are you not interested in these? Then maybe I can learn Sue embroidery from you? He actually came to the studio to learn Sue embroidery from me. Maria's health wasn't as good as before, and I handled most of the studio's affairs. In a way, I had taken over her work. Jack's figure stood out among the group of girls, but he studied seriously. After half a month, he showed me a small pink flower he had embroidered for my review. Teacher Lou, take a look. Did I pass? The small pink flower was clearly the work of a beginner, but it was definitely excellent for a beginner. I curved my eyes. Yes. Is there a reward? His eyes were smiling. I thought about it and stood on my tiptoes to kiss the corner of his mouth. How about this? I asked him. Can I have this little flower? Jack didn't answer. He touched the corner of his mouth and fell into a brief thought, looking a bit overwhelmed. Professor Wen's first piece was eventually framed and placed on my desk. A not-so-perfect but sweet and clumsy little pink flower. After getting together with Professor Wen, besides science problems and Sue embroidery, we had other topics to explore. Like hugging, like kissing, like... On a particularly ordinary winter night, it was warm indoors, and Jack knocked on my study door. Teacher Lou, I need to go to another university for an academic exchange tomorrow morning. It will probably take 5 days. I looked up at Jack. He had already told me about this trip. So, given that I need to wake up early tomorrow, can I ask to hold you to sleep earlier tonight? But he was a liar. The ceiling above me became blurry, and Professor Wen's eager voice came from below. Is this right? Teacher Lou, why are you shaking? I vaguely remembered Layla saying something about a guiding type of partner before. That wasn't completely accurate. Jack had a kind of sly eagerness to learn. But he was also genuinely tolerant and gentle, except for the occasional intense moments. Epilogue. A few years later, Jack and I built our own little family. I initially thought I would be better off financially than him, until Jack gave me his card, and I was stunned by the balance. Jack said I have some patents. He truly showed me what knowledge is wealth meant. Later on, we had a daughter, and our little one slowly grew up. When she was in kindergarten, I was busy promoting Embroidery. One day, my little girl's favorite dress got a hole in it. She cried pitifully and eventually cried herself to sleep. I came out of the study and saw Jack in the living room holding our daughter's little dress, carefully embroidering her favorite little rabbit onto the hole. Professor One, as a father, was patient and gentle. My heart seemed to melt into water. The wounds I suffered in my youth were healed one by one during these years by Maria, by Sophie and Layla, by my husband and daughter. Jack looked up at me, holding up the little rabbit and smiling. Teacher Lou, do you think my embroidery has improved? The little rabbit embroidered on our daughter's dress was cute and delicate. I smiled with my eyes and commented, a lot of progress. And I was immersed in my own family and career, and I hadn't heard about the Miller family for a long time. Later on, I heard that some project of the Miller family had blown up, and the shares had plummeted. This happened after Tom took over, but it was just a major blow, not enough to collapse the Miller group. But it had nothing to do with me. Mrs. Miller and Mr. Miller tried to get me to come back later, but I still refused. Maria was over 80 years old now, and she needed me by her side even more. Of course, compared to me, she seemed to like my daughter more now. I originally thought that marriage and career could be balanced, but after having a daughter, I realized that this little one was not only a money pit, but also a little loudspeaker. She would constantly issue commands to mom and dad, and she liked to stick to her parents, which was both troublesome and sweet. I love her and I love her father.